미국 증시 연일 사상 최고치를 기록하면서 상승장의 신호탄을 쐈는데요. 이에 따라서 상승하고 있는 미국장으로 넘어가는 서학개미들도 늘어나고 있습니다. 특히 미국에서는 똘똘한 한 종목만 골라서 알차게 수익을 내자라고 하는 단일 종목 ETF 상품이 인기라고 하는데요. 시장의 이슈와 흐름에 맞춰서 2배, 많게는 3배까지도 흐름을 낼 수 있기 때문에 시장 투자자들의 관심과 이목이 집중되고 있습니다. 오늘 매일경제TV 특집에서는요. 미국에서 18년간 ETF 산업에 종사하고 시장에서 사랑받고 있죠. 엔비디아와 테슬라의 레버리지와 인버스ETF 상품을 만드는 그래니트셰어의 설립자이자 CEO 윌린드 씨와 함께 미국 투자에 대한 전반과 ETF 투자 전략까지 함께 들어보도록 하겠습니다. Hello, nice to meet you, Mr. Rhind. So can you please say hi and let us introduce yourself?
안녕하세요.
Yes.
I'm Will Rhind, founder and CEO of GraniteShares ETFs, based in New York City. We're an ETF company that offers a range of ETFs in the US market and also in Europe, where we're active on major European exchanges such as the London Stock Exchange, Italy, etc. So we run a portfolio of ETFs, but probably we're most well known for ETFs that provide leverage to single stocks like Tesla, NVIDIA, etc.
Yes, I heard that you already worked for ETF for 18 years. So I'm curious about what kind of ETF you made before.
Yeah, I've been working in ETFs for longer than that. I'm getting older than 18 years. So I've worked on every kind of ETF really, from gold, so physical bars of gold that are in a vault, to commodity futures, to equity portfolios, income portfolios, and our latest sort of products, which are leveraged ETFs on single stocks.
Yes, you answered that you focuses on commodity or futures and also NVIDIA and Tesla. So you want to know that what is your top consideration when you make ETF?
The top consideration is really we want to launch products that investors love.
Yes.
So part of that is to think about what problem are we solving for investors that exist today. So that problem could be providing access to a particular market like gold, where it's difficult for people to do it, or commodities where it's difficult for people to access. Or it could be something like leverage on single stocks, where traditional means of getting leverage via a brokerage account can be very expensive and non-efficient for the investor.
Solving the existence problem is the most top consideration for your company, right?
Yes.
So especially we heard that in the US, people, especially individual traders, more focuses on ETF than Korea, right? Is that true?
Yeah, the US is the largest market for ETFs in the world, hugely popular. And I've been active in the ETF market since the beginning of the 2000s. Every year, the ETF market grows more and more. And when we first started, it was relatively small. Now we have trillions of dollars that are invested in ETFs. And I would say that the ETF, put simply, is the investment vehicle of choice for investors in the United States and more broadly, I think, ever increasingly the world.
Yes, and especially recently, you made the ETF products about Meta, AMD, Alibaba, and those kind of really hot and famous stocks. So is there any reason that you chose those stocks for ETF?
Yes, so the two biggest themes really that we see at the moment for investors in the United States, and I think in Korea as well, is AI, or artificial intelligence, and cryptocurrencies. So those are the two most popular things that we see from investors. So in terms of stocks, NVIDIA, clearly our NVDL has been the number one. And then AMD, another stock that people love in terms of an AI play. And on the cryptocurrency side, Coinbase. And Coinbase, levered Coinbase, CONL is the ticker, solves a problem for investors because in some markets, such as Korea, I believe, you still can't buy a Bitcoin ETF.
Yes.
And so it's a way for investors to buy exposure to something that is similar to Bitcoin.
So how did you firstly make the ETF about the crypto? So because before your company made the crypto ETF, there was no that kind of products before in the market.
That's right. So we did it originally for the similar reason,
Yeah.
which was in the US, there was no Bitcoin ETF and there was no leveraged Bitcoin ETF. And so we thought we could create an ETF that provides leverage to Coinbase in that way, allowing investors to not only get exposure to cryptocurrencies, but get leveraged exposure to cryptocurrencies as well. And it's been very popular.
That's what the problem solving.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is why people really nervous and love your company's ETF. And recently, you made the ETF about NVIDIA, and that was really loved by so many people in the market. And can I ask you, why did you start to make and focus it on the ETF of NVIDIA?
Well, again, we are big believers in AI
Yes.
and the theme of AI. And fortunately for us, we wanted to bring NVIDIA to the market because we are big believers in the AI theme. And fortunately, the timing was right where we launched NVIDIA really about 2 months before the global release of ChatGPT. And so after ChatGPT was launched and became an amazing phenomenon,
Yes.
investors saw that ChatGPT was powered by NVIDIA, and the rest was history in terms of interest in NVIDIA.
You already focus on the market stream and how people interested in.
Yes,
And that's
exactly.
a really important thing when you consider about the new ETF products. So also, I want to give you a question that our people really interested in, because when people choose the ETF product, they also think about the management fee. And people who haven't tried ETF, they are really worrying about the how amount of management fee. So can you please give us any idea about it?
Yeah, so ETFs typically have all sorts of different management fees.
Yes.
From very, very cheap to expensive. So depending on what the underlying exposure really is, and for me, is it easy to provide the exposure? In that way, it's low cost. Is it complicated to provide the exposure? That way, it's more. So our leveraged ETFs, the management fee, if you were to hold for 1 year, is 99 basis points or just under 1%. So if you hold it for a long time, it may sound like it's expensive, but you're getting leveraged exposure to single stocks,
Yes.
which if you did that in a brokerage account, that's very, very expensive, much more expensive. And typically our investors hold these products for a relatively short period of time. So when you consider the cost to own it per day is much less than 0.1%, it's very inexpensive.
So you mean that it is more advantageous if we keep the ETF for more shorter day, but in short term, right?
It just means that from a management fee perspective, it's very cheap.
Yes.
Yeah.
So also, I want to ask you, is there any difference between the management fee of leverage ETF and inverse ETF or non-leverage ETF?
Typically, the leveraged ETFs are more expensive, so have a higher management fee, and that reflects the cost of providing the leverage.
Yes.
So it reflects the cost that it's a harder instrument to bring to market, and therefore there are more costs involved for us, and therefore that is reflected. Whereas if you have an easy portfolio that's non-leveraged, the cost is going to be lower.
Yes. And also, when we choose the ETF and when we choose the new stocks in the US, we have to think about the global phenomenon and how the global market and US market is going on. So I want to focus on FMC. So the March FMC was recently done, and Jerome Powell and talked about there are possibilities for 3 times. So what do you think about this FOMC and its effect on the market?
So I think it was positive. In other words, that there was nothing really that was said that was unexpected.
Yes.
So he told the market that he expects 3 interest rate cuts between now and the end of the year, the first one most likely in June. So that was within market expectations or in line with market expectations. And that's why you saw the market continue to rally after the comments were made.
Yes. So market is still so strong. And this is why you have to focus on stock market and ETF markets. And at right this time, so which kind of sector that we have to more focus on? Do you also still believe in AI or Tesla? Or what do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The AI sector is still incredibly popular. A lot of the key companies, NVIDIA clearly doing very, very well. Also, cryptocurrency market is at all-time highs, just like we've seen for some of the AI stocks. But I think more broadly, it's indicative that the market itself is really strong. And yes, you have AI, yes, you have crypto, but you have a lot of stocks in the Magnificent Seven, and more broadly, trading at either all-time highs or multi-year highs. So a lot of strength overall in terms of the market.
Yes, that's true. So right before this question, we talked about Jerome Powell and FMC in March. So I'm really curious about how U.S. people feel about the FMC and how they think about and predict about the future plan of FMC.
So I think that people feel quite positive about it because the things that are most important to U.S. investors are interest rates. And we know that interest rates are coming down according to what the FOMC just told us. Inflation, and inflation data is coming down. It's also an important factor. And then just more broadly, you have the economy at almost full employment, plus GDP, the economic growth is rising. So I think everything is pretty positive at the moment.
Yes, it's really surprised for me that every people, especially U.S. stock and market, really positive of the future and their GDP and their economy and even the stocks. So I also want to give you a question that if interest rate really fall in reality after June, in the past we focused on the Tesla. And right now we focus on NVIDIA and other AI stocks. But right after the interest rate fall, do you think that the market's mainstream will change it, like to another stocks?
Yeah, I think that certainly, some of the problem points in the market are due to the high interest rates. So particularly in the real estate sector, where you've had problems with commercial real estate, with mortgage loans. People, can't afford to get a mortgage that's 7% interest rates, these high levels. So when you bring interest rates down, that's going to make it easier for these parts of the economy that have been affected by high interest rates. And also will be better for companies more broadly because the costs of financing will be lower. So look at a lot of companies, particularly the smaller companies in the market, in the Russell 2000 and things, they will benefit, I think, from lower interest rates.
And also because this market changing is really fastly. And this is why we have to focus on leverage ETF or in some case, inverse ETF. Do you think if the market condition will be changed, do you have to focus on inverse ETF and we can get more profit?
That's it. I mean, it's the reason why you have the two is because there are going to be times when people will want to try and profit from a company's share price falling. And there are times, obviously, that people want to profit from it rising. And sometimes, that can happen where, people want to hedge a long position, for example, and so they're using a short for hedging purposes, not just for speculation. But there will be obviously good times and bad, and it's up to investors to use these tools to trade and to be active around it.
Yes, I hope our people can realize that ETF sometimes can be on hedging. And also, there is a stock that is not a hedging ETF, but also working and acting as a hedge. That's the Tesla. And do you know that Korean people recently also they are collecting the Tesla because they think that the stock of Tesla is right now in the bottom. But this is our product and this is our belief. So no one knows it's really bottom or not. So how do you believe that this tendency that Korean people collecting the Tesla?
Look, I think that there's a lot of things to be positive about with Tesla. Whether it's the bottom right now, like you said, who knows? But in many ways, the problems that Tesla's been exhibiting are not problems with the company per se.
That's
a
true.
lot of the Chinese economy, for example, everybody knows is having a tough time. That's not Tesla's fault that the Chinese economy is in a tough time. So when you look at what the company's doing, they're raising prices in the US globally for the Model Y, trying to improve margins. I think that will help with the company, and we'll see how consumers respond to that. But Tesla is obviously a bet not just on electric vehicles, but it's about the electrification of everything. It's about battery technology and the role that electricity will play in our economy going forward. So I think when people have bet against Tesla before, that it hasn't worked out and the company has bounced back. And I think that there's no reason really to believe that shares of Tesla won't bounce back this time because it is a company that has some phenomenal prospects.
Yeah, so you said that the problem is not the company, the Tesla, but the problem is the Chinese market. So if you want to say any words to the private investors in Korea, so who want to collect in Tesla right now?
Yeah, I think that Tesla, the story, the fundamentals are still there. There's clearly a slowdown in terms of electric vehicle demand. Like I said, a lot of that is from China. But this is a company that is the market leader in electric vehicles and the electrification story more broadly. There's battery technology, there's self-driving, there's AI, there's robotics, there's all sorts of things that Tesla will be bringing to bear. The Cybertruck is just coming out now in the US, huge demand for that particular vehicle and already trading at a huge premium in the secondary market. For those that are trying to sell their Cybertrucks. So I think that Tesla has a very bright future, and maybe people buying now are buying smart and buying the dip.
Yes, so we have to remember that Tesla is the still leader of electronic vehicle. And also I want to figure out that I already told you that Korean people are interested in Tesla and NVIDIA, but what's the stocks and ETF that US people interested in?
It's very similar.
Yeah.
So I think at the moment is probably the only difference is a little bit less in Tesla, but really into NVIDIA and cryptocurrency, so Coinbase. So anything to do with chips, with semiconductors, GPUs, American investors really love that at the moment. They really like the cryptocurrencies. Those are the two big themes that we see at the moment.
Okay, so that's very similar, and this is really, really fun that the people in Korea and people in US same perspective about the market and the future. So because you came to Korea and you visited here, so I think this question will be really, really tricky and hard. But if you want to make a Korean people's ETF, so which kind of stocks do you want to put in there?
I think at the moment, thinking about that, it would have to be some of the chip maker stocks that we talked about. So NVIDIA, AMD, etc., some of the cryptocurrency stocks. But I think the overall kind of top 10 would have to include Tesla if we were doing something for Korean investors.
So do you mean that all including crypto and AMD, NVIDIA, the chip maker, and also Tesla together?
Maybe an ETF on the top 10 most popular stocks, something like that.
Yes, that's a good idea. And also, I heard that the GraniteShares is really famous and popular for single stock leverage ETF and also inverse ETF. So recently, the size of your company and your ETF is really bigger and bigger nowadays. So what strategy and what perspective do we need when we do and buy the ETF products?
Yeah, I think for us, we're trying to launch more products all the time, trying to grow this market because leveraged single stock ETFs are very new still to a lot of people, and you can't buy them in a lot of markets around the world. So in the US, we're lucky to have that business. In Europe, we have that business. The difference is our products in Europe are 3 times levered. Our products in the US are 2 times. So there's really a big array of products for people to choose from. And the beauty of the platform is people can look at the list and say, okay, I like Microsoft, I like Amazon, I like AMD, I like Tesla. And they can choose which stocks they want to have leverage to.
Yes. And also, Korean people love 2 times, 3 times leverage inverse ETF. But I think in US, people can also buy ETF products about Chinese markets. So how do you think about that?
Yes, exactly. So there are a number of different ways to offer that in the US. But from our perspective, again, we have a leveraged ETF on Alibaba. So a 2 times leveraged ETF on Alibaba. So for those that are interested in Chinese technology, but also the Chinese economy, it's a proxy for enabling them to invest in that story.
So can I ask you how do you predict and expect about Chinese economy or Chinese stocks? So there will be some people who want to really put their money in Chinese stocks. Which one is in the Nasdaq? So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think at the moment it's a difficult time for investors because the Chinese economy has not performed well. But for those that are looking for a longer term play, that believe that the Chinese economy will turn around, maybe it's an opportunity. for investors to buy low rather than at the high point.
So we have to see in more longer term.
Yes.
And also right now is the end of the March of 2024. So the first quarter is already passing. So how do you predict for the last 3 quarters of 2024?
I'm very positive about it. I think that typically when we're talking about stock market history, a lot of the times we look at the first month of the year, and that's a predictor of how the market will go for the rest of the year. So clearly we started very strong, and so at the moment it looks like all the data is pointing to another positive year in the market. We'll throw in one thing to consider that we haven't talked about, and that's we have a presidential election as well.
Yes.
In the US this year coming up. So typically, again, by historical standards, when you have an election year, that's typically more often than not a positive year for the stock market and the year following the presidential election. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be positive at the moment. The economy's in good shape, employment is good, interest rates are coming down, inflation seems to be in check. And so we've got the stock market at all-time highs, and I think that there's reason to believe that we can go higher from here.
So you said you see positively about the U.S. stock in the rest 3 quarters in 2024. But also when the U.S. stock is rising, the Japanese stocks also go the upper rally. But Korean stock is not. So if you want to make a new stocks, do you want to put Japanese stocks or Korean stocks in your ETF products? Do you have any plan?
Quite possibly. We want to offer products that investors love and that people want to trade, that people want to own. So a lot of the times it's not just what we believe, it's also what investors want. And so we listen to feedback from investors, and if people want specific things, we can consider that.
So lastly, I want to give you a little bit tricky question. So as a private investor, not a CEO of the Granite, if you have the same money, in which market do you want to put your money? U.S. market, Japan market, or Korean market?
So I would put, and I may be biased, so you can freely call me biased.
It's okay.
I would put it in the U.S. market, and that's really because that's the market I know the best. But it's a market that has just performed so well. I think the prospects for the U.S. are really good, and it's not to say that the prospects for Korea or for Japan are not good. It's just that it's a market that I'm most familiar with, that I'm most confident about, and has performed for investors so well over the last few years.
Yes, and that will be a really good insight for our people because they want to put their money in U.S. stocks, and they will be really worried about which market they have to choose. Yes, thank you, because we knew that you are really have a really good thought about the positive perspective of the U.S. stocks. Please say any few words for their future product and future stock marketing to Korean investors.
Yeah, so we at GraniteShares are trying all the time to innovate, to bring new products to market that people love. We pioneered this category of leveraged single stocks that's being very successful, but we're just in the beginning. We're just starting to expand this category, to raise awareness, to try and raise awareness to Korean investors, to investors all over the world. So lots more exciting things to come.
Yeah, thank you so much. 네, 오늘 그래나이트쉐어의 CEO 윌린드 씨와 함께 미국 주식 그리고 ETF에 대한 투자 인사이트 함께 얻어봤습니다. 여러분들의 앞으로에 있어서의 성공 투자에 도움이 되었기를 바라겠습니다. 오늘의 내용이 도움이 되었다면 매일 아침 7시 20분 진행되는 0720 매아리도 많이 함께 해주시기 바라겠습니다. 오늘도 시청해주신 여러분 모두 고맙습니다.